It's really weird, the things that we remember about our childhood, or maybe the weird part is the things that we try to forget and can't. My childhood was great. I didn't suffer through a lot of the things that a lot of other people suffered through. So looking back, it's hard because I want to be critical. You know, I want to be critical of my parents and say what a horrible job and how messed up they made me. But the honest truth is that my parents were great. I had two parents, a mom and a dad, and that's a lot more than what some people had, you know. I know a lot of people that had just a mom or just a dad or maybe just a grandparent, and they didn't really want them there. So both of my parents were very loving. I can remember as a kid, both of them would read stories to me, stories at bedtime. I remember waking up early and jumping in their bed and doing a 100-piece puzzle, you know, with my favorite superhero Marvel people. I don't know. I can remember my dad, he was always playing with me and my sister, and my dad was big into sports. We played t-ball. He would be the head coach of our t-ball team, and if he wasn't, he would be the assistant coach. And Saturdays we would spend at the baseball field all day. My sister would have her game with her team. I would have my game with my team. My dad would teach us football. So in the backyard, I would get down with the ball between my legs and I would say, "Hut!" And I would hand it to him. And then I would go run a route, and I would run 5 steps and turn right, and my dad would throw the ball, and I would catch it, and we'd get so excited. We'd travel back and forth the backyard. If we found an open space, we would play from one end of the open space to the other and then call it touchdown. My dad was a big Michigan fan. Always watched the Michigan football games. Yeah, baseball in the backyard. I remember they even got us a tether ball. I don't know where my dad found it. My dad brought home one day a giant iron pipe, and it must have been about that big around, and it was probably 15 feet long. I don't remember how he strapped it to the top of the vehicle, but we had a basketball hoop, and it was one that he made himself. He went and got a piece of wood. He cut out the wood, he attached it to the pole in our driveway, and we had a hoop and nets, and I learned basketball. So there was almost nothing that my parents didn't encourage us to do. We were exceptionally smart kids. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was always taking care of us, doing the laundry, doing the dishes, making every meal. If we got sick, we stayed home from school, and she was there to give chicken noodle soup, you know? How many kids can say that? That pretty much from kindergarten through, 9th, 10th grade, she was there. We used to go grocery shopping as a family, always working on home improvement projects. So yeah, I can't complain too much. If I could say that it was a complaint, I don't know, that doesn't feel right. It was just something that happened. So when I was a kid, I can remember my mom would make a bath, and my sister and I would jump in the bathtub together, and it was, wash each other, and then my mom would leave for like 5 minutes and go do something else. So one day she came into the bathroom, and I don't know, my little lever must have been pointing northward, and my little sister must have been giggling or touching, and my mom said, no, bad, 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 you're not doing that again. And we stopped taking baths together. I remember my sister and I, she was my best friend, and we would play everything. Pretend that we are Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia, and I would rescue her. We had a tire swing in the backyard, which was freaking awesome. One day I think I was trying to pretend I was Luke, and I was going into the Wampa, the ice fortress, and I ran into my parents' bedroom, and I ran to the back of the closet, to hide, and my sister was going to come save me or something. And I looked down on the floor, and there was a real small little shoebox, and it was partly open, so I peeked inside and I found a bunch of Polaroids. My dad had bought a Polaroid camera, and he'd taken a bunch of pictures of my mom in a bunch of interesting positions, or I don't know how to put it. I looked at them and I didn't understand what I was seeing, and my mom came into her room and she found me, and again it was bad, 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 no, no, no. She didn't spank me that time. I don't know, I wasn't a perfect kid, but it was the 80s and I grew up with He-Man, you know, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and they were always fighting. Thundercats were always fighting, G.I. Joe. So there was a lot of conflict, and I pushed the boundaries. I always push the boundaries because, you know, that's what you do, right? I think when I was a kid, I was just trying to see what I could get away with, you know? I was trying to test my mom, push against her. Yeah. My mom used to spank me when it was imperative because it couldn't wait till my dad got home. And she went and got the little paddle. Do you guys remember the paddle? This thingy? So she took the ball and the electric, or the stretchy part, what do you call that? And made a paddle. And she would spank my bare naked butt with this paddle. And I would scream and cry, you know. When she wasn't looking, I would go into her room and I would find the paddle, and then I would destroy it or throw it in the trash or hide it in my room somewhere. So my mom got in the habit of buying 3 or 4 paddles. And it was a game. It really was. I don't know why I was such a mischievous kid, but I would tackle my sister sometimes. I would wrestle. Oh, I'd watch WrestleMania. My dad and I, we'd love the WWF, you know. Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan. I think Ultimate Warrior was one of my favorites. And wrestling was fun. It was good. It was release of energy. And of course, I was bigger than my little sister, so that helped. Sorry about that, sis. Yeah. Fun stuff. I don't believe that my mom meant to, but looking back, I think what she did was she created this idea that anything sexual was bad and your body parts were bad. You didn't talk about it. You just didn't. You certainly didn't do it with your sister. I think my mom's upbringing was very Christian reformed, and you know, in their family you didn't talk about sex at all. It was just something that the mother of the family and the father, you know, they would go into their bedroom and the father just did whatever he needed to, I guess, you know. I don't think my dad had much religion in his childhood, and I think it was probably even less talked about. Maybe, I don't know. I kind of think my grandpa, my dad's dad, you know, he must have talked to he must have talked to his son about sex, and I don't know. Some of the mysteries we just don't get to understand, you know. My dad turned out very sexual. My mom just, I don't know. So it was always a point of friction. And if you grew up in the 80s, there was a lot of sexual innuendo everywhere you looked. It was in our TV, it was in our movies, it was in our songs, our music. It was even in the places where you thought you'd be safe. Like you would go to school and they would teach you about don't talk to strangers because strangers will kidnap you. Why would they kidnap you? Why would anyone kidnap anyone else, right? Don't take candy from strangers because again, they're going to kidnap you. So I don't know. I think it was about 1980. And my family, my dad and my mom, my little sister and I, we moved from Marquette to Grand Rapids, which was in a lot of ways like coming home. My dad and my mom, they both grew up for the most part in Grand Rapids, both went to school. And I believe that my dad desperately wanted to get away because there was the abortion and the shame and the guilt, and he just wanted to get away. Just take my new bride way up north into the snow, into the dark, and I can have sex with her all the time, and we'll raise our couple kids. My dad told me this story that he used to go to the neighborhood market store. I don't know if you could even call it that. So there used to be a little mom and pop store, you know, down the street and around the corner, and you could go there and get, you know, your groceries, or I don't know, it was like a general store, pretty small. So one day my dad was going to this store. I think it was named after the owners. It was called Noel's, with an N-O-E-L, Noel's, like Christmas. And outside this store, there was a cardboard box with little puppies. And my dad looked down and thought, oh, that's a cute one. So he grabbed a little puppy. It was all black, all fuzzy and furry, and he gave it to my mom. When it was time for my dad to go do his time in the Air Force, he asked my mom if she wanted to come, and she said, well, of course. And my mom's mom said, well, hey, now, you're taking the dog, right? And my dad said, yep. Our dog's name was Boogie. He looked like the Boogie Monster. He was all black, very smart, lots of personality, and I loved him. He was my dog. He was my family's dog. So yeah, my life was pretty good. I think it must have been like 1981, I started elementary school and did pretty well. I was a smart kid. I knew how to read. I knew math. I knew a lot of stuff. My parents, you know, they pushed it into us. I remember one time I was hanging out with one of the neighborhood kids. His name was Jason. And Jason had an older brother whose name was Travis. And Travis was the kind of older brother that would like pick on his little brother. He would pick on, maybe he was a lot like me. So Jason and I, with Travis behind us, were walking around one day, and we spotted a little snake. It was like a garter snake. If you don't live in Michigan, we have these real small, real harmless garter snakes. So Travis reached down, picked it up behind the neck, and it wrapped itself around its wrist. He would try to tease us or taunt us with this snake, because if you squeeze the back of the snake's neck, it would open its mouth and it would hiss, you know. I'm sorry, it's kind of windy today. The leaves are falling. My mom had taught us that when somebody was doing something mean to you, you just ignored them, you know? Because if you gave a reaction, that would only encourage them to give more reaction. So Travis, the older brother, recognized this, and he had to up the ante. So he reached down with his free hand and he found a stick or a branch or a twig, I don't know. Right in front of me, he held up this snake and he held up this twig and he pushed the stick all the way down the snake's throat, all the way down its body. The stick popped out the snake's tail. A bunch of yellow blood, guts came out, and the snake died right in front of me. It was horrific. It was the most horrible thing I'd ever seen. Like, I'm 5 years old, guys. And that caused a reaction. So I ran home. I just ran and screamed. I couldn't believe what I saw. I couldn't believe it happened. And now Travis has this snake wand and he's poking me in the back of the neck or poking me, you know, in the arms, and I'm just screaming bloody murder. Ran all the way home, ran into my backyard, ran through my back door, and I'm screaming. My mom comes running. She says, what happened? What happened? And I'm just crying. I can't describe it. I just start pointing, and I'm like, Travis did this thing, it is so bad, and Travis is so bad. And so I look out the back window, and Travis takes this snake wand, and he chucks it up into the tree in my backyard. And I went inside. I didn't want to think about it. I was somewhere else. But I went out the next day, and I looked up, and yep, there it was, stuck in my tree. So I didn't want to see it all summer long. I thought hopefully a squirrel or a bird will come along No birds came, no squirrels. They apparently don't want to eat dead snakes. I don't know. So as a kid, I thought I would throw my baseball up at it, or I would throw the football. I tried a frisbee. I think I even tried the claw hammer on a piece of rope. And I just couldn't. I couldn't knock it down. I think I only succeeded in getting it more stuck. So for the rest of the summer, I couldn't look at that spot. I couldn't look up. I feel so bad for that snake. And ever since, it has left this huge phobia in me. I'm terrified of snakes. If I see a snake on TV, I freak out. If I see one in real life, I will jump on top of somebody's shoulders and scream like a girl. My most horrible nightmares when I'm sleeping, they're snakes. Some people have spiders. I think my dad had bunny rabbits. The scars we get, huh? So in kindergarten, I meet this girl, her name was Anne. And because the teachers were kind of lazy, they would do a seating arrangement that was alphabetical. So Anne would sit in front and Bishop would sit right behind her. And I fell in love with this girl at a very early age. She was the most awesome thing I'd ever met. When we had show and tell, she would stand up in front of class and she would talk about the episode of Three's Company that she had seen the night before. If you guys don't know Three's Company, it was pretty adult. I don't know. It came on right around 8 p.m. It was a thing for a while. And yeah, she would literally retell the events of this Three's Company's episode, which I thought was hilarious. I don't remember what I would do for show and tell. It probably wasn't that cool. But I remember Anne. And all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade, Anne and I were pretty much, she was in front, I was in back. I don't think we had any romance, but I can remember as a kindergartner, for recess, we would go outside, and while all the other kids were playing on the playground, Anne and I would find the little wooden house, and we would pretend we would play house. She would be the mama, I would be the dad, and we would do Three's Company. We even had a third friend. Her name was Jenny. And here's a picture of us. For my birthday, we went to Chuck E. Cheese. And of course, I wanted to invite both Anne and Jenny. Pretty weird when you look back at it, you know? The things that we did. But as a kid, this was just normal, right? Normal kids doing normal stuff. I miss my school. It looks a little bit different now. So yeah, this was my childhood home, and it looks a little bit different. And directly across the street, this was my grandma's house with the two Jeeps. So yeah, you could walk across the street. It was that close. Grandma's house. Hello.
Hi.
My house. This is my grandparents' home, the one that my grandfather built. And then way off there, if you can see that big mess of white thing, that is what used to be the Kelvinator plant. It closed up. I'm not sure what happened to it. I can remember during the winter time, they would have snow plows, and it would plow the whole parking lot into one ginormous mountain. And it was just 3 stories tall. It was truly a mountain range. And my little sister and I, we'd climb up in there and burrow in there. And it was just the most magical place you could imagine. I loved it. It feels kind of weird to be back here because if I let my mind go a little bit, it still feels like home. It still smells like home. The sidewalk, the sidewalk is still home. I used to know every one of those bumps because when you'd ride your bike, or when I would push my little sister in the wagon, she would sit in the wagon and, you know, work the steering wheel, and I would push her. So yeah, my childhood was good. I always had a bicycle. My sister always had a bike. For a while I was doing skateboard and rollerblades. I think I must have been about 9 or 10 years old, and I met this other kid. He didn't go to my school. He was at a private school, a Christian school. But he lived right down the street from me, and he stopped me one day and he said, "Hey, do you want to be friends?" And I said, "Well, sure, you know, why not?" He was about my age, a little bit shorter. We quickly became best friends and did everything together. Spent every day, every night, sleepovers, I don't know. So right here is my best friend's house. I don't know what you can see. Can you see it? Looking a little bit bright. So I would ride my bike down this sidewalk and I would see my best friend. And I knew his whole family, you know, he knew my whole family. Here's his house, his driveway, very memorable. It didn't always look like this. There used to be a swimming pool. Just like my house, it didn't always look like that, you know. But yeah, it's eerie how familiar it can still feel. I don't know, just eerie. So much has changed, but at the same time, not much has changed. It was always kind of weird in my childhood because my mom and dad didn't seem to really like each other. They didn't spend much time together. My dad was always doing his own thing. He was active, so he didn't sit still a lot, you know. He would be working on the house, on a project. My mom would always be doing dishes, laundry, doing her chores. I guess when it came to hobbies, my mom liked to paint ceramic figures. My mom liked to quilt and crochet and knit and do sewing. You know, that was her thing, her passion. My dad liked to do farming and gardening. You know, he liked sports. He liked weightlifting. It wasn't too far into our family home that my dad went and found a wood-burning stove. So this is like a big oven, basically, and I forget where we got it from. It might have been the neighbors across the street. I remember him wheeling it over on a little dolly. Big, heavy, massive, fire-burning oven, basically. And he set it up on our back porch, and then he would go out and he would collect pallets or skids, and he would bring them home, carry them to the backyard. He would bust them apart, you know, with hammers and crowbars, and he would peel every single nail out of every piece of wood because you didn't want nails in your oven for some reason. And then he would chop them all up with a circular saw, and then he would stack the wood, and we would have wood for our fire all year long. This was a very time-consuming thing, and I think my dad did it to avoid. There was just a lot of avoidance, you know. So I would help my dad. It was my job to like carry all the fire pieces to the stack, and the smell of sawdust, wow, it still brings me right back to my childhood. Kind of weird. The backyard behind my house had train tracks, and trains were very active. The trains would come rumbling through, and it was loud, but when you were a child and this was normal, you just got used to it. So if I had other friends come over, they would hang out in my house or in my backyard, and all of a sudden a train would come rumbling by and it would shake everything and vibrate the windows. And my friend would be like, "Oh my gosh, you know, there's a giant train. Is it coming right for us?" And I'd be like, "What are you talking about? Like, I didn't hear anything, you know?" So these train tracks, my best friend and I would spend lots of time back here. There was a big empty woods. Beyond the woods, there was a junkyard where people would actually pile up old vehicles. It was just piles and piles of junk. It was a junkyard. So my best friend and I, we would play. We would pretend that we were the Ninja Turtles. We'd build little forts. We'd pick up sticks. Yeah, good stuff. With my grandma right across the street, and no husband, no grandfather, there was always chores. She had big apple trees, and they weren't like apple trees that would produce real edible apples. These were like little crab apples. They were really hard. And when they fell on the ground, they would start to rot, and bumblebees would start swarming around, rotten apples. You know, that was good fun. So my grandma would say, hey, if you pick up all the apples, I'll give you $1. And back then, that was a lot of money, you know. So my little sister and I, we'd do chores. When I got a little bit older, I could push the lawnmower around. I could take out her trash. She was always there to give money. So I would take that money and I would buy more toys. My grandma would ask, what do you want for Christmas? And she would spoil the crap out of us. Oh my gosh, she would spoil us so bad. Like I said, I was a big fan of the He-Man and the Thundercats and the G.I. Joe. So my grandma would literally buy me like 17 gifts for Christmas. And I would get all the action figures, and then I would get the vehicle, and then I even got Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain. I got showered with gifts. My parents didn't know what to get us because my grandma had already bought everything. My sister had My Little Pony and Barbie, and the Barbie convertible and the RV. It was just, toys were just a big part of our lives. This is back before computers, back before video games. But my dad had this thing where we would be poor pretty much all year long, and then the right time would come and we would make a big purchase. I can remember a big stereo set with the record player, the cassette player. It even had the newest CD player. Fancy. Big speakers, big floor speakers. One year he went and bought a swimming pool, and we put a above ground swimming pool in our backyard. My dad built it by hand, bought the kit, the liner. When he wasn't busting up skids or pallets, he would buy lumber from the local store, and he would build an above ground deck around our swimming pool. So yeah, between my best friend and I, we would be in that swimming pool, my little sister, all the time. I can remember he also bought our first family computer, a Commodore 64, and oh my gosh, I loved that thing. You could play games on it, you could learn to program on it. It was just basic stuff back in the day, but I knew at a young age that I was a computer guy. It was awesome. So yeah, with my grandma right across the street, if you had to go to the bathroom and someone was in your bathroom in your house, we only had one bathroom, you could run across the street real quick, run into grandma's house and say, I gotta use the bathroom, and grandma would be sitting on the couch and you'd run in there and do your thing. My dad, he didn't really like his mom. I'm not sure why. I have my suspicions, but it always fell to my mom or me and my sister to take care of grandma. My dad, he was very much alone. He was very much a recluse. I don't know. It became a thing where my mom and dad weren't happy with each other. That's the only way I can say it. I remember them fighting a lot, and later I learned it was because of my dad's constant cheating. I remember my sister and I would stand outside their bedroom door and listen to some of the horrible things that were being said. And my mom was always crying. And when my mom came out of the bedroom, we'd say, what happened, Mom? Are you okay? And she'd say, it's okay, I'm fine, nothing happened. So there again, just like with the sex thing, it was don't talk about it. Don't ask about it, don't talk about it. And with my dad, it was run away and go work on something else, go forget about it, you know. I know he got a lot of anger out on those skids and those pallets, believe me. Those skids and those pallets, he beat the shit out of those. I don't know. Every 6 months, it felt like my parents were fighting again. Sometimes it would get real bad, and my dad would have to go spend the weekend at a hotel. And I can remember that my mom would get scared, probably because of what my dad was telling her, threatening her. And she would let us sleep in her bed. One of my dad's bigger purchases was a waterbed, and the waterbed was awesome. It was warm, it was wavy, but it was a king-size waterbed. My dad built the frame for it. And my mom would invite me and my little sister to sleep in her bed next to her. My sister would be on one side, I'd be on my dad's side, and that felt kind of weird. And I remember I developed this thing where I'd have to stick one of my legs out and just rest it against my mom's leg. I just wanted to know that she was there, that her presence was there, because it felt like, to me, my dad disappeared. Like, what was gonna happen to my mom? Would she disappear too? So yeah, I constantly needed to feel that leg at the end of my toe to fall asleep, to feel safe. And I think my mom was okay with that because she needed to feel safe too. Yeah, weird stuff, huh? I can remember my sister, her 9th birthday. My parents had a big fight. It was big, it was massive. I remember my dad was holding a knife in the kitchen and he was threatening to kill himself. And he was saying what a horrible person he was and how he would never do it again and he was gonna end his life. And my mom was weeping and my sister and I were just sitting on the couch going, what the crap? It's her 9th birthday. Dad, like, really? Why couldn't we be happy? We seemed real happy on the outside. We had all the things. But on the inside, it was just rotten. It was bad. It's a pretty day. I think I must have been about 9 years old and my parents had a massive fight. This was like bigger than normal, bigger than my sister's 9th birthday. Yeah, maybe I messed that up. I don't know. It's hard because the really difficult stuff gets so blurry, it's so fuzzy that you're not worried about what time or what year or what day or what, I don't know. My mom announced that she was pregnant. And my dad did not want to have a 3rd child. He really, really didn't want to have a 3rd child. You know, you already had a boy and a girl. Yeah, just big fat no. We're not going to do diapers. We're not going to do baby food. We're not going to have crying babies. No. And my mom was adamant. She was like, you know what? I'm keeping them. I think my dad pressured her to have another abortion. And my mom was like, I'll die first. So my sister and I watched my mom's belly get bigger and we watched my dad grow more distant and he just didn't want it, you know? And I wonder how much of it was the situation and how much of it was just my dad trying to run away some more, you know, trying to escape. It seemed like my dad was always trying to escape. I can remember one family vacation, we drove the family minivan all the way to Key West in Florida. That's how far my dad wanted to get away. I think it took us 3 days. We drove all day. We only stopped to get Wendy's cheeseburgers and Frosties. I remember bringing my books. I was reading the Dragonlance, the trilogy. But let's back up a little bit. So one of my mom's brothers, I think it was her oldest brother, I think it was my uncle, he gave me one day for my birthday a strange box. I thought it was like a board game. I opened it up. It was called Star Frontiers and it had some really cool pictures on it. But inside this box was a couple of books and a map and I didn't know what it was. I remember it sitting in my closet for a couple years and I think I got really bored one day and I opened it and I started looking through the books and I started reading it. It was at an early age that I was exposed to role-playing games. Dungeons and Dragons had just become a thing and this was like Dungeons and Dragons only in space. So there was aliens and laser pistols and tanks and hover cars, and it was just magical. It was awesome. For me, having always been in my own imagination anyway, going out in the backyard and swinging on the tire swing, pretending I was Indiana Jones, all the movies, they were all superhero movies, you know? Conan the Barbarian, Indiana Jones, the Superman movie itself with Christopher Reeves, and I pretended I was all of those people. So now, with this role-playing game, you can pretend on a whole nother level. And I instantly grabbed my best friend and I said, hey, we're doing this, we're trying this. So, you know, I was the dungeon master, I was the guy that knew the rules, and my best friend, he would pick a barbarian or a dwarf or a warrior, and we would tell stories and roll dice, and it was magical and it was awesome, and I fell in love with it. So yeah, the family voyage to Florida, I had the Dragonlance saga. It was a great time to be alive, you know. I had so many interests when I was a kid, you know. I knew a lot about everything. I mean, school was school, but I knew music. I used to have my own little tape recorder, and I remember hearing the song Land of Confusion. What's the guy from Genesis? I forget his name. Paul Simon? No, it was the other guy. George? I forget. I would listen to this song, Land of Confusion, and try to write down the lyrics because it went so fast and he said so much, you know? I loved books, I loved movies, skateboard, bicycles, you know, the home projects that my mom and dad would always work on. I knew paint, I knew construction, how to use a circular saw without cutting my fingers off. I'm surprised I still have all 10 fingers, I really am. But I also learned a lot of bad habits at an early age, you know. I learned not to talk about things. I learned how to run away from my fears. I learned how to run away from my problems, basically. Often it was just run down the street to my best friend's house and lose ourselves in our imaginations. Go out in the woods. My best friend, his dad owned a construction company, and it was, he would set up little exhibits for, I don't know, various events, I guess. So here's a new countertop, you know, here's a new kitchen or a new bathtub. So he had the drills and the saws and the wood and the metals, and my best friend and I, we'd go to his shop and we would make physical weapons, swords. I made a battle axe. You know, I'd take an old mop handle and turn it into a bow and pretend I was Donatello from, you know, the Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then we would fight. If we weren't fighting each other, we would, you know, go out and hit the trees in the backyard, smack the trees, pretend they were orcs. I was often in my head a lot, you know. Even when I was with other people, I think I was still, for the most part, you know, stuck in my own head. It's weird. I wonder if you could quantify it, you know, and say on a scale of 1 to 10, how present was I? Because looking back, I disassociated from a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. My parents noticed that I was hanging out with a really bad kid. I think it must have been 3rd grade. His name was Billy. Billy was the kind of kid who had very little supervision. So when my parents used to tell me, hey, you couldn't cross the street on your bike, Billy would cross the whole town. He would take me to the pizza place and there would be an arcade machine, and he would show me that if you wiggled it just right, you could play extra games for free. He was kind of a bad influence, and I would tell my parents, I would be like, you know what, this Billy kid, he's crazy. So my parents did something weird. They said, you can't hang out with him anymore. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Yeah, you can't have that friend. Bishop, we're sorry, you can't hang out with Billy. And I thought that was so wrong. Like, how can you tell a person that they can't have a friend, you know? He was a guy I was in school with a lot, so that was pretty weird. When I couldn't hang out with Billy, I got picked on. All the other kids, I guess I was the alpha because I was smart and I was funny. I knew girlfriends, so I got picked on. They would run around the playground and try to give me a wedgie. Not pleasant. I don't know. Maybe I was a lot like my mom and my dad, where, you know, social skills, it's tough when you feel like you have a target on your back and you get bullied a lot, you know? So all the more reason just to disassociate, to go upstairs, read my books. When my little brother came along, my dad changed his mind. I guess that's what happens when it's no longer just an imaginative kid. It's not I mean, now it's real. Now he's right in front of you, my little brother. And for me, wow, that was cool. I got to learn a lot about kids. I changed his diaper, you know, I fed him a bottle. I helped him learn how to walk, and I helped him learn how to read. And he was like my little sidekick. He was my practice kid. I can remember my best friend, his family had a Spree. It's like a little motorcycle. It only goes about 25 miles an hour, but we would ride that Spree all over all the time. You had to wear a helmet, no seatbelt. And even if you didn't have a driver's license, you could be 12 years old and you could ride this Spree. So I remember wrestling with my little brother, teaching him about Ninja Turtles. I would lay on the living room floor and my little brother would get up on the couch and he would stand like Ultimate Warrior does on the edge of the ring, and then he would jump and fly and smash me right in the stomach, and I would laugh and I would build my stomach muscles so that it wouldn't hurt. So one day I remember we were on the Spree and my little brother comes running out. He says, I want to go for a ride. I want to go for a ride. And I'm like looking around to see if my mom's around. All right, come on, just get on. So I scoot back a little bit. My little brother's right here on my lap and we're going vroom, vroom, vroom. We're riding, we're going up and down the sidewalk, sometimes in the road. We got down the street to my best friend's house and he's got this big brick driveway. So you go up the bricks, you get and of course my little brother's bounce, 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 and he's screaming. It's awesome, it's hilarious. Well, at the end of the driveway, I make a right turn into the lawn. And the lawn is sort of, it's nice, it's mowed, but there's little divots, little bumps here and there. I went to make a turn and the Spree tipped over and my little brother, he fell right into this pine tree. It was like a Christmas tree in my best friend's yard, and my little brother just went right into it. I fell over too. I jumped up immediately and I looked for my brother and all I could see was his little legs sticking out and he was screaming and crying. So I pulled him out and he had this big old gash on his forehead. And I said, don't tell your mother, don't tell your mother. And he was crying and blood's dripping all down his face, you know, it just... So I left the Spree there because it was in my best friend's yard, and I carried my little brother home. And my mom, she's like, what happened? I said, well, he fell. What were you guys doing? You know, just playing. And she looked at my little brother and she, you know, started to dress his wound, and she said, what happened? What happened? And my little brother said, we were playing, just playing. Kids, huh? What do you do? My little brother became my best friend. My little sister, so she kind of drifted. I don't know. She was doing her own thing at that age. Yeah. Fun times. I can remember one other crazy story, event. Shortly after my family moved into our small house, the government came and they purchased a plot of land that was directly next door. I don't know. The border of the property was real close to our house. They built a low-income housing unit there. It was a house, I guess. It was very cheap. It didn't have a basement, it didn't have an upstairs. And it was literally about 8 feet directly to the west of our house. So our house wall, 8 feet, which my parents were very unhappy about. My dad went out and he bought a bunch of fence pieces, and he built a big old 6-foot fence on the edge of our property. And I remember it was kind of Section 8. A lot of low-income families would come in. They would come and go. So I'm not real sure why. And again, a lot of this is fuzzy. There was one time that, I forget what age I was. There was a family that had a daughter. I think it was probably just a single mother. Had a daughter, and she used to come and play with us. I don't even remember her name. It was that brief. She was in our backyard one day, and her and she says, "Ooh, let's go underneath your deck." So the swimming pool had a deck all the way around it, and underneath was about 3 or 4 feet of dungeon. You know, you could pretend you were in a cave. And I said, okay, so let's go. We found a spot underneath the deck, and she says, "Hey, will you show me your willy?" And I was like, okay. So I pulled my pants down a little bit, and she said, "Well, can I touch it?" And I said, okay. I was pretty, I don't know. It was just, I was a kid. So I think she started to touch me, and then something went off in the back of my head, and I was like, oh wait, my mom says this is bad, so I gotta stop this. So I pulled up my pants real quick, and I ran in the house, and I said, Mom, this girl next door, she's trying to touch my private parts. And my mom freaked out again. She said, "Oh my gosh, what have we told you, Bishop? How many times? Your private parts are private. No one's supposed to touch them. No one's supposed to look at them." And I said, all right, I'm sorry. So I think that little girl got in trouble. My mom must have went next door, talked to her mom. I wasn't allowed to play with her anymore. So again, sex was bad, and you were taken away. You were removed, Here's the loss of a friend. Here's you can no longer take a bath with your sister. Here's just bad. I don't know. It was kind of weird. So, yeah, weird. I used to have dreams. Wow, I used to have dreams. When my grandfather passed away, I used to dream in the night that he was sitting on the end of my bed. Just normal, I would dream that I would wake up and he would be there, and he'd be like, "How's Bishop? How you doing?" And I'd be like, "I'm good. Did you see the trains today?" "Yeah, I saw the trains." "Are you going to go on a bus ride again?" "Yeah. And then I would wake up and tell my mom and dad that I dreamt of Grandpa again, It was a pretty normal thing. I also had a lot of dreams about falling. For some reason, I think I must have fallen out of my bed a couple times while I slept, and that moment when you are falling, pretty scary. I'd have dreams where I was jumping real high, like I could levitate. I'd had dreams where I could fly sometimes. I don't know. You guys, I don't really know if any of this is true. This is just me trying to recall what happened, and like I said, I was a kid that was half in my imagination all the time. So when I look at these old pictures, I am sort of reminded of the things that happened, and to the best of my ability, this is me trying to remember, trying to piece together, what really happened from what I must have imagined. I want to say that if you know me in life, or if you were my mom or my dad, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. This is just me trying to tell my story and share my life. My channel is not monetized, so I'm not profiting from this in any way. I might be the only guy in YouTube that says, don't hit the subscribe button. You don't have to hit the like. I don't care. I don't really show this to a lot of people. I don't spread it around. I'm not advertising anywhere. Like I said in the beginning, it's just someday when I'm gone, people can see it, and people can hear my voice, and people can know, what my life was like. So thanks for watching. If you want, make a video of your life and remember as much as you can and send it to me, because I'll check it out. Bye guys. See you next time. I love you. It's about to get interesting. It's about to get interesting.